Hey friend, welcome to another episode of My Counselor Live. My name is Anna McGuire, and I have the joy and the privilege of being on the team here at MyCounselor.Online. We get to hear from a very special member of the MCO team today, and that is the one and only Kristina Paris. Kristina, share with us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I love being a Christian counselor here at MyCounselor.Online. Been here for a while now, and I enjoy working with couples in communication and sex counseling, even individuals with trauma related issues. And yeah, it's definitely a joy and a privilege to be able to serve God's people in this manner.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I love getting to work alongside of you and learn from you.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see your passion for couples really grow and influence even my own practice as a clinician. I've been
Yeah.
so inspired just by the way that you really invest in couples, which actually brings us to your article, which I loved it. It's called A
Mhm.
Desirable Marriage, Vulnerable or Guarded, which ooh, like both of those words, vulnerability and being guarded, both can be kind of like triggering statements. So tell us what inspired you to write this article in particular.
Yeah, so what inspired me was really trying to break down and explain to people the value in vulnerability, the value in being open, honest, transparent
Mm,
with one another, and the damage that being guarded and defensive can do. Whether you are in a dating relationship, being engaged, or entering into marriage, there are life hurts and things that that people can experience, and it can be traumatic, it can be hard to deal with, and it can hurt. So naturally we're going to take that, kind of build a defense so we don't experience that again and get hurt in the same way.
mm,
So naturally, when you engage in another relationship, you take that with you, and depending on how many relationships you are in, more builds up, and now you're entering into another relationship, and it's like this new person that you're entering into this relationship with, they are paying the price essentially for others' mistakes, and
mm,
it's like you're not giving them a fair shot in the new relationship that you are in. They're taking on the burden of what you had experienced, and now you're having them pay the price. So I really wanted to allow people to understand the value in being vulnerable. Vulnerability is essential, it's critical to any long lasting marriage, and
mm,
to have a happy and successful marriage. A lot of people don't understand that. And so that's kind of what I wanted to hone in on the article,
mm.
and the many couples that I've counseled and how they communicate. It's like, well, I'm going to hit the below the belt. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that because you're not going to hurt me, kind of having these defenses. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, you really need to understand what comes out of your mouth cannot be taken back. You
Mm,
can apologize for it. You can say, I'm sorry. There's things you can try and do to kind of back out of it. But bottom line is, it can't be taken back and it will stay with them.
mm.
Yeah.
Kristina, that is so good. And you kind of touched on this as you explained what inspired you to write the article, but who exactly is this article written for? Who did you write this with in mind?
I wrote this for every couple, whether you're in a dating relationship, whether you are just getting married and fresh honeymoon stage, or you are 30 years into marriage, 40, 50 years into marriage, and you're trying to figure out, man, we went through this again, this little rough patch. What do we do? How do we navigate all those things? So this is really for anybody, even if some people, they are high school sweethearts and trying to find someone. So trying to develop those ways of communicating, those effective ways of communicating, and how to be in a relationship, starting to hone in on those skills
Mhm.
and to apply that so that way when you do meet the one, you are able to operate in a way where it can give you a foundation for success in it.
Mm, that's so,
Yeah.
so good. And I loved what you said just a few moments ago. You said like for like any kind of healthy, long-standing relationship, particularly marriage,
Hmm.
that it can't be successful or healthy or thriving at the level that God intended unless vulnerability is present. So
Hmm.
why would you say it's so important to practice, not just like say, yeah, vulnerability is good, but to actually put to practice vulnerability in marriage or in your um, those kind of like committed relationships that may lead into marriage?
Hmm. Yeah. So vulnerability builds trust. It builds and creates trust. It's a foundation for um, uh, a good, happy, healthy marriage, right? You're able to be um, vulnerable, you're able to be empathetic, you're able to break down the walls and to really listen and hear and attune to what the other person is saying. You're more so you're more so listening to hear what the other person's saying rather than listen to them in an argument to give back a rebuttal or an attack,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
It can, if cared for correctly, it can be the very thing that can increase the longevity of your marriage and have
mm,
a long lasting, healthy, and fulfilling marriage. Um, and you and your spouse are going to be able to connect at a deeper level
mm,
because you're able to let them into that deeper place versus um, having them at bay,
mm,
right? So a lot of couples, they are vulnerable to a certain extent. I'll let you in, but only so much,
mhm,
right? But a lot of people, when they let them in only so much, there's that wall there and they hit that wall. And a lot of times people can tell that, okay, they're letting me in, but only so much.
mm,
I'm
mhm,
putting up a hand here, you're not going any further, which is a problem because if somebody wants to get deeper and more connected with you, it's going to now make them withdraw and
mm,
make them want to treat you in the same way. And now you guys are doing this dance of being guarded because neither one wants to get hurt.
mhm,
And so it's a dance that you guys are now engaging in a cycle.
mm,
And it's an unhealthy cycle and it's a damaging cycle. Vulnerability increases intimacy in the marriage. It
mm,
allows you both to come together and communicate on a more intimate level.
mm,
Yeah. Vulnerability includes compassion, empathy, forgiveness, which all of us have hard times with. It's a task that all of us have to continue to navigate and kind of figure out. Um, yeah, and vulnerability is like in a marriage, you feel like your needs are getting met.
mm,
That love there
mm,
is being tapped into. You feel like, okay, this person gets me, they understand me, they love me for who I am, not the fakeness that I put on,
mm. Yeah,
right?
so yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And it can allow you, like I said, to feel truly loved and feel genuinely supported and comforted by your spouse. So that's why I think it's important to engage in and practice vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's essential and critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you put it that way, that like vulnerability builds trust, that it builds this intimacy. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
like that's what we all, I think at the core of who we are, we desire in our marriages and in our relationships really at large is that we want to feel like we can be known and loved and that the person that we're being known and loved by that we can trust them and know that they have our
Yeah.
heart. But you're right, it comes, those things, those wonderful things we love to experience, they come at the cost of being vulnerable.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good. So you shared, which this is where I love where we get to in some of our conversations. And in this article in particular is like this practical next step. So like how do we walk out vulnerability in our marriage? If we recognize, okay, I have been engaged in this cycle or the dance of being guarded, and so has my spouse. Like, what are some tools that we can use to be more vulnerable?
Yeah. So forgiving past wrongs, right? How somebody has um, done you wrong, and working on forgiveness in that aspect, affirmation, affirming them, being empathetic, compassionate, um, and really having effective communication. Not effective communication, I'm going to tell you like it is, I'm going to tell you how it is, and I'm going to give you my opinion. But effective communication in the sense of vulnerability with the undertone of love, and how this person can hear what you're saying and can apply what you're saying in a loving way, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that like
Yeah.
word is so like the effective piece. Because yeah, you can communicate like saying whatever you feel, but
Yeah.
will it be received by the way that you're saying it? Yeah.
Yeah. There's differences in this. There's a there's a difference in vulnerability and being guarded.
Mm,
There's distinct changes and differences, and um there will be drastic effects of the relationship that you're in
mm.
if you learn how to apply it in the right way. Yeah.
So good. Kristina, as I was reading through this article, I thought to myself, okay, how can I be more intentional with vulnerability? And I love that piece that you mentioned in the beginning, but also you allude to here is that forgiving past wrongs. Is
Mhm.
that sometimes like when it comes to being guarded, we are giving people, I guess, the consequences of somebody else's previous decisions. And so
Mhm.
learning how to process maybe some of those things that people did to us in the past that hurt us, that we're carrying into the present, that now is causing us to be guarded with those that we love the most.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to um apply it. You have to learn how to um engage in vulnerability is it's really hard. A
Hmm.
lot of people have a hard time being vulnerable. Some people don't even know what vulnerability is. And so it's like, okay, let's try and figure this out. Some people are not even in touch with their emotions to even begin to engage in the idea of vulnerability, right?
Hmm.
And it's very, very critical. It's so critical. Um, I just want to touch on something really quick. Um, it allows you, like I was saying, it allows you to connect on a deeper level with your spouse. And it's about being open, honest, and transparent. I like to give the acronym HOT:
Hmm.
honest, open, and transparent. That was actually something I heard a pastor, Michael Todd, say. And it just hit home. And it was like, oh my goodness, like that is so true. And yeah, you guys are able to become more emotionally intimate when you're vulnerable.
Mm.
Um, and your needs are met. Um, and it can help test the strength of your marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mm.
can break down walls, and it allows you to be willing to learn and to listen.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And it allows you to be truly loved. Yeah. Whereas guarded is like the opposite. It's like, hey, I know what you're gonna say, I know what you're gonna do. I'm gonna I'm gonna react this way because I need
Mhm.
to let you know that you're not gonna hurt me again, right?
Mhm.
And guarded is not something um, that your spouse, I would say, deserves,
Mm.
because they married you with the intention of loving you for the lifetime.
Mm.
Yeah, for sickness and in health, richer for poorer, till death do you part. They're in it for the long haul,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So why would they intentionally want to hurt you? There's if you guys are engaging in a guarded dance in that cycle, you're both gonna like be shooting the gun at each other. And
Mm.
over time, you're gonna kill it, the relationship.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's so good. Or I love that you're saying you're going to kill it, because that doesn't necessarily mean like divorce, but it's
Mhm.
just like the vibrancy, the
Mhm.
intimacy, that trust, and that is the lifeblood
Mhm.
relationship, is that vulnerability, the trust, the feeling safe with one another. And so I love that
Mhm.
you're leaning into that. And so that acronym is HOT: honest, open, and
Transparent.
transparent. I love that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
God.
I use it all the time. And he's a great pastor in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So
Yes.
he's great.
I love reading his stuff on like dating and marriage. I think his
Yes, he has a great book out now too.
yeah,
Relationship goals, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So practical. So awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kristina, what would be your final piece of advice or encouragement for a couple that is struggling with vulnerability right now?
Oh, if you are struggling with vulnerability, one, I would say to get into counseling.
Mm,
Yeah. Go ahead and get into counseling and learn how to tackle those emotions, why you're so defensive and guarded, why it's so hard for you to um, engage in a deeper level with your spouse.
mm,
Yeah. Why is it so hard for you to forgive? Right? Why is it so hard for you to effectively communicate with your spouse with love? Right? Those are very important things. And so I would definitely recommend getting into counseling, um, just really being vulnerable, honest, open, and transparent with your spouse.
mm,
If you're struggling with that, learn how to effectively communicate, learn how to affirm your spouse, learn how to forgive past things. Yeah, any traumas or anything that went on, learn to forgive that. Learn to work through that, right?
mm,
Let your spouse know that, hey, I'm here for you. When you engage in empathy, right? You're saying, hey, I'm putting myself in your shoes. So being in their shoes, would you respond to them? Like, so if you are saying, gonna say something to your spouse and you flip the script, would I like it if they said that to me,
mm,
right? In this place of hurt, then it's gonna help you it's gonna help guide you in how you should communicate with them. And it's gonna also over time allow you to communicate with love effectively.
mm,
Okay. Whereas compassion is different, right? Compassion is knowing that they're hurting, knowing that they're suffering, right? It's different than empathy because you're putting that action behind it and wanting to alleviate that pain,
mhm.
take
Yeah.
it from them, right? And affirming them is like giving that emotional support, right? And connecting with your spouse and building the marriage. And it's like that action or process of affirming them or being affirmed. So, hey, you did great at the chores today. Thank you for doing that for me today. You did such a great job. Versus expecting them to take out the trash or to do something, right? And not saying anything because that's what they should have done,
Mm,
right? And then, but when they do something wrong, you're constantly saying something negative. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And you're not helping them. You're
yeah.
not affirming them. And so learning how to navigate those things, learning how to um, apply them will be something that you can gain tools in counseling to do, how to cope with it, how to effectively communicate with the undertone of love. Okay, reframe. I hear you're saying this, but what this means to me is this.
Mm,
Is this accurate? Is this right? Right? And if they say no, you guys keep going back and forth. And so that way both of you guys can get understanding of
mm.
what you're really trying to say.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Effective communication is so important.
love it because like as you're sharing, like what you're sharing is in part so inspirational and encouraging, but then in the other part, it is also so practical, because sometimes we can be encouraged and inspired and then be like, now what? Or we
Yeah.
have information that we're not inspired at all, but you have this like beautiful balance of the two, that it's inspiring and it's encouraging and you're giving like a vision to go after, but then you're also giving the practical next steps for those things. And so thank you for that. I'm personally inspired and reminded of just the importance of practicing vulnerability in my own life and the beauty,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the challenge that it is, but the beauty
Mm-hmm.
that comes from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a challenge. It is a challenge. A lot of people are challenged with it. I'm challenged with it at all times, not all times, but sometimes, right?
For sure.
And as you continue to do this, it becomes easier and easier, right? To remain in that level and to allow that your spouse into that inner place of you.
Mm,
You really feel loved, like they know you and they love you and accept you for who you really are.
mm.
And it's a beautiful thing. Give it a
So
shot.
yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have your article linked wherever you're listening or watching this video. There is a link in the notes for Kristina's article, A Desirable Marriage, Vulnerable or Guarded. And you can read through in more detail what Kristina just shared with us. And honestly, I would encourage you to go over this article with your spouse. Like, how can we grow? Like, how can we apply more of this together? Like, I'm already thinking like, yeah, this would be a wonderful conversation to have with my husband. Like, how do we continuously grow? Like, this isn't like a finish line. This is something
Mhm.
that's continuously evolving and we're learning and growing in and leaning into. So thank you so much, Kristina.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Absolutely. So here at MCO Live, we do like to talk about different trending topics. So that what we do is we find out things that people are interested in when it comes to mental health and just their overall health. And we take those topics and we discuss them with one of our clinicians. And so today, Kristina, our trending topic is this idea of trauma triggers. Now, can you
Mhm.
tell us what a trauma trigger is?
Yeah, so a trauma trigger is it's like a trigger, or it's something that describes a topic, an image or a word that could reasonably trigger a trauma in a person,
Mhm.
right? Something that really what it is, what is the title of it is, right? A
Mhm.
trauma trigger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do these trauma triggers develop?
An experience that somebody has went through.
Mm,
Okay. Um, from that experience, these things that happen will trigger the experience of the trauma, right? So
mm,
from that experience that that they encounter, right?
mhm,
Um, and it's traumatic for them,
mm,
right? And then so when something else happens, that trigger can bring back this trauma, and it's like almost like they're living in it, but they're not really living in it, and they have to figure out how to cope with that. Yeah. Some
mm,
things that can be a trigger for a trauma is like events. So it could be like an anniversary or a holiday,
mhm,
or it can be like a scent or a sound, or a pain or a sadness or a memory.
mhm,
Um, Different things. I mean, there's a slew of things that can trigger a trauma for a person, but essentially, it's developed over something traumatic that has happened in their life.
mhm.
Yeah. And then something that reminds them of that is going to trigger them to take them back to that experience.
Mm.
Mhm.
So for you as a counselor, what is your advice or encouragement for how somebody can deal with their trauma triggers?
Yeah, so I would say probably coping skills, right? So doing some deep breathing, some expressive writing, whether it's poems or writing in journals, or um, uh, some people like to just write books. So kind of like storytelling. So that's some good ways. Social support, finding your support system, and allowing them in and talking to them and letting them be there for you. Self-soothing, relaxation, mindfulness, some grounding techniques. Those are some ways that people can definitely handle those traumas. Yeah.
Mm, so good. So good. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristina.
Yeah.
Now we are going to take some time to answer a few viewer questions or listener questions. So here's the deal. We want you all to know that you can submit your questions to My Counselor Live. All of the questions that we answer are questions that have been submitted by you. And so whenever you submit, we may just be using your question in a future episode. And you can submit your questions at MyCounselor.Online/ask. And right there will be a form to submit your question. So here is our first of 2 questions for today. The person asks, should I stop hoping for my husband of 28 years to provide empathy and safety from betrayal from a pornography addiction? He won't stop watching pornography and won't admit that it is wrong.
Okay, so there's a level of accountability that needs to take place. Okay. And there needs to be some level of conviction about doing it.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, in a marriage, in a relationship, porn is a form of infidelity. Okay. So there needs to be counseling throughout that. And for the individual, for the woman that is being hurt and betrayed by that, it's called betrayal trauma. Okay. And she is like she is in she's being hit by a bus that she didn't see coming, and now she's in ICU, right? It's not something that can be easily or quickly fixed, right? It takes time to get out of ICU, so it's going to take time for her to get to a more stable place. Okay. But it's important for them to seek counseling. Okay. For herself, for himself, as a couple, for their marriage. Most importantly, she should pray to God and ask God to help him in this area, to help him remove it from himself. And if he won't stop watching it, or he doesn't see anything wrong with it, or doesn't want to admit it, that it's wrong, it will be hard for him to provide her with empathy and safety. Yeah. So, but don't stop hoping. Okay. That's what I would tell her, and to pray and to get counseling. Counseling can help him see the effects of what he's doing with his pornography on himself, on the marriage, what he's doing to her. Yeah. And it can help him to stop it, but also for them to restore and build their marriage. So that's what I would say for her.
Yeah, that's good sound wisdom right there.
Yeah, thank you.
The second question that we got, the individual writes, my sister recently got married. I want to feel happy for her, but I'm mostly jealous. As I struggle with singleness, what should I do?
So there's beauties in getting to know yourself, in getting to also be there for your sister, right? So don't stop being happy for her. Don't be jealous of her. Try not to be jealous of her for the stage of life that she's in. Okay. But also, if you want to seek counseling for where that jealousy stems from, okay, why you're so jealous. Obviously, you want to be married and things like that. And it's hard, especially when you see somebody living the life that you want. But I would encourage her to pray. Yeah. And get more in touch with herself, and to continue dating. You're going to find somebody. You're going to find the one. It's just taking some time. Yeah.
I love what you said, like getting to know, like taking this as an opportunity to get to know yourself. I think sometimes when we're in a place of, particularly where there's like jealousy or comparison, our eyes get so fixated on other people when really it's kind of that calling card for, hey, it's actually time to put your eyes on yourself.
Yeah.
Really lean into, yeah, why? Okay, she's in a stage of life that I want to be in, but why is this so hard? Like, this is somebody I love. This is my sister. Why is it so hard for me to feel happy for her?
Yeah.
Like, so really giving yourself permission that it's okay to kind of put the attention on myself and dig
Mm-hmm.
into. And I think that really practical thing is going to counseling and seeking out a counselor and sharing explicitly with a counselor that, hey, this is something that I'm working through.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll help give you the tools and the things that you need to kind of work through that jealousy, but whatever you're going through in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also help you to be happy for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a way that's very passionate or very pure,
Yeah.
okay, without the underlying undertone of jealousy, right? And so, yeah, just continue dating. It's gonna come.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna come. You're gonna
Yeah.
find that one. God's gonna bring him to you. Just pray and ask him how to be a better version of yourself so that way when he comes, one, you won't scare him off, but two, you guys will be able to make it and learn with each other and move forward. And that would be it. You guys will have a wonderful marriage.
Yeah, that's part of your encouragement. Like, keep dating too. I feel
Yeah.
sometimes people or individuals can become discouraged with the process, which understandably so.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's okay to give yourself permission that you can date and meet other.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Kristina, I love your perspective on things. I just value your voice and your wisdom so much. Like, not only do you have strong knowledge, but you have strong discernment and a beautiful perspective on people, and you have a love for the Word of God. And so, anytime you speak, I'm here to listen because just so much wisdom comes from you. And this conversation is no different than that, just full of nuggets of wisdom. And I know it's going to be encouraging for our listeners and viewers today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Just, yeah, again, for being part of the MCO team and coming and being on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's such a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful to do God's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
cool. Love that we get to do it together.
Yes, yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, friend, thank you so much for watching or listening to My Counselor Live today. And again, Kristina, thank you for being on the show.
Mhm.
I want to encourage all of the viewers and listeners to submit your questions to us so that we can answer them on a future episode of MCO Live. You can, again, submit your questions at MyCounselor.Online/ask. So MyCounselor.Online/ask. You can put your questions in there, and guess what? We may answer your question in a future episode. Also, we'd love to have you subscribe to one of our social media pages. You can find us on Facebook, and that's facebook.com/Love My Counselor. You can find us on Instagram. Our handle is Love My Counselor. And you can find us on YouTube, which is youtube.com/MyCounselor.Online Christian Counseling. Guys, we cannot wait to see you again for another episode of My Counselor Live. Have a great day.